In a time when connection is currency and dependence is disguised as virtue, there exists a man who quietly refuses both. He walks among the crowd, but stands apart from it. He does not shout his truth, nor does he seek comfort in collective affirmation. He does not explain, does not confess, does not ask for permission. He observes, acts, and disappears. He needs no one, and for that reason alone, he is the most dangerous figure you will ever encounter. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance strategist so often misunderstood as a mere advocate for manipulation, saw this figure clearly long before our time. He understood that power does not reside in visibility, or in the number of allies one collects, but in the ruthless discipline of self-reliance. He recognized that the man who needs no applause, no audience, no emotional cushion, this man cannot be controlled, because to control someone you must offer them something they cannot refuse. And what do you offer a man who refuses everything? Today's world does not celebrate this type of man. It celebrates the open, the vulnerable, the agreeable. It celebrates collaboration, consensus, community. It frowns upon silence and punishes solitude. The man who isolates is labeled arrogant. The man who withholds is deemed suspicious. And yet, beneath this cultural obsession with exposure lies an ancient fear, the fear of the one who cannot be reached, the one who owes no explanations, the one who operates beyond emotional leverage. Machiavelli warned us of this paradox, that the individual most at peace with his own solitude is the one most likely to command the world's attention. It is better to be feared than loved, he wrote. Not because fear is pleasant, but because fear imposes boundaries, where love invites manipulation. And the man who needs no one establishes those boundaries not with aggression, but with absence. He is not cruel. He is simply unavailable. He does not need your love, therefore your love cannot touch him. He does not need your help, therefore your help cannot own him. There is a psychological advantage to detachment that no volume of networking can replicate. When a man chooses solitude, when he chooses it, not when it is forced upon him, he becomes sovereign. His thoughts sharpen, his instincts refine. His moves are made not by committee but by conscience. He does not ask, will they approve? He asks only, will this work? That clarity is not just rare. It is terrifying to those who depend on feedback to form identity. Most men crumble without connection. They beg for reassurance, for validation, for visibility. They need a mentor, a friend, a circle. But the Machiavellian figure, he builds not a circle but a fortress. Not to keep others out, but to keep his mind in. He understands what most do not, that every alliance comes with a price, and that the highest price is the erosion of independence. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances. Machiavelli observed, but the man who needs no one does not play to appearances. He plays to outcomes. He does not smile to gain favor. He does not flatter to maintain harmony. He does not dance for approval. His silence is his statement. His restraint is his rebellion. And because he says little, every word he does utter arrives with gravity. This man is not easy to understand, because he does not explain himself. He is not easy to predict, because he owes no consistency to anyone's expectation. And he is not easy to defeat, because you cannot disarm someone who has no need for your weapons. He is not attached to winning in your eyes. He is not moved by being misunderstood. He does not require your agreement to proceed. That precisely is what makes him dangerous. Consider how most people operate. They announce their plans. They seek applause before the work is done. They require encouragement to continue. But the man who needs no one, he acts without announcement. He completes without ceremony. He moves forward without applause. He lives by internal principles, not external praise, which means he cannot be delayed, distracted, or derailed by anyone's opinion. In meetings, he speaks last. In conflict, he listens more than he reacts. In strategy, he reveals only fragments, never the full picture. And when questioned, he does not defend. He allows silence to hold the tension. The more you press him, the less he gives. And the less he gives, the more others unravel. Why? Because people are unnerved by emotional economy, by someone who will not meet their energy, by someone who does not crave connection. He is not without emotion, he simply refuses to weaponize it. He is not without feeling, he simply refuses to bleed on command. He is not cold, he is calculated. And calculation in a world obsessed with impulse looks like a threat. Machiavelli knew that control is rooted in predictability. If I can predict you, I can play you. But the man who needs no one disrupts that formula. He is unpredictable, not because he is erratic, but because he is not dependent on anyone else's cues. He moves when he's ready, not when you provoke him. He speaks when it matters, not when it's expected. And most dangerously, he is never the loudest in the room. He is the one you notice only when it's too late, while others post, react, explain, and justify. This man builds quietly, while others seek validation. He seeks leverage. While others measure their success by attention, he measures by impact. And impact, Machiavelli taught us, is not made through noise. It is made through power. Power that is not borrowed, not begged for, and not granted, but taken through clarity, silence, and precision. The man who needs no one is not trying to impress you. He is trying to build something you won't see until it's already done. And when it is done, you will ask how he did it. You will wonder how he moved so freely, how he escaped the traps you walked into. The answer, of course, is simple. He never needed your permission to begin with. The man who needs no one is not born. He is forged. Forged in disappointment, in betrayal, in the quiet realization that dependence is a luxury the powerful cannot afford. He has felt the sting of relying on others. He has watched doors close after giving his trust, and slowly, deliberately, he has stripped himself of the illusion that anyone else is responsible for his rise. Machiavelli would not have seen this man as heartless, but as awakened, not cold, but wise, not arrogant, but alert. For it is only after being let down by friends, by lovers, by leaders, that a man begins to understand the necessity of silence, of solitude, of strategic withdrawal, not as retreat, but as evolution. It is in this solitude that clarity begins. You stop asking what others think. You stop checking the temperature of the room before speaking. You begin to make moves, not because they are popular, but because they are necessary. And you begin to sense the futility of broadcasting your every step. Machiavelli knew this well. The prince who speaks too much reveals his position. The one who waits learns everyone else's before revealing his own. The man who needs no one builds his plans in the dark. He does not outline them for consensus. He does not seek applause before achievement. He understands that attention is not power, it is bait, and those who seek it too eagerly end up tangled in the very net they wish to command. So he waits, he watches, and while the world talks, he sharpens his skills, his vision, his patience. And patience, as Machiavelli wrote, is a weapon too few are trained to use. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally, and the fool announces, explains, overcommits, and underdelivers. The wise man, by contrast, appears late, but finishes first. This man is dangerous because he is immune to your influence. Compliment him, and he smiles. Insult him, and he smiles. Offer him power, and he evaluates. Threaten him, and he listens. But nothing moves him unless he deems it useful, because his validation is internal. His compass is fixed, and his silence, his refusal to react, is not weakness. It is the strongest move he can make. You cannot seduce him with status. You cannot guilt him with obligation. You cannot scare him with rejection, because he is already beyond your reach. Not physically, but psychologically. He's left the space where approval lives. And once a man no longer needs applause, he becomes almost untouchable. The modern world, with all its noise and algorithms and endless communication, is built to erode this kind of man. Every app demands attention. Every platform demands disclosure. Every group demands participation. But the man who needs no one does not participate on command. He engages on purpose. He does not post to be seen. He acts to be effective. And when he vanishes, it is not a fluke, it is strategy. We've been trained to think presence equals power, that visibility equals value. But Machiavelli warned us, it is much safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking. Why? Because fear respects distance. Love demands closeness, and closeness, when unchecked, leads to compromise. This man protects his distance, not because he fears intimacy, but because he understands its cost. He is not cruel, but he is precise. He does not share out of guilt. He shares out of calculation. If his words serve no purpose, he holds them. If his presence adds no value, he withholds it. And if your demand is rooted in emotion, not necessity, he denies it without apology. That, more than anything, is what unnerves people. The man who says no without anger, who walks away without drama, who listens to accusations, considers them and says nothing, because silence, in the hands of the disciplined, is not avoidance, it is judgment, and judgment without words has a power that shouting never will. This is the man who negotiates by not negotiating, who leads by withholding, who dominates by being unpredictable. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must imitate the fox and the lion for power, the fox for cunning." But the modern man, the man who needs no one, has become both visible strength and invisible calculation. When he shows his teeth, it is already too late. He does not explain his past, because he owes no one an explanation. He does not justify his actions, because his results justify themselves. And he does not warn you of his next move, because warning you would make it weaker. His value is not in his charisma, it is in his control. Think of the people you fear disappointing. Think of the ones who draw your attention without trying, the ones whose silence feels louder than anyone else's voice. It is not because they are loud, it is because they are scarce. Because when they do speak, it is clear. When they do act, it is final. When they do appear, it is with purpose. That's the man Machiavelli was describing, not with the vulgar caricature of evil, but with a sharp, philosophical respect. The man who wins without boasting, who controls without chains, who influences without speaking. Because the man who needs no one is not simply independent, he is inevitable. What happens when this man enters a room? He does not speak first. He does not announce himself. He does not scan for approval or adjust his tone to match the energy of the group. He sits, he waits, and yet his presence reshapes the air. Others become conscious of their words. They begin to explain more, to justify, to fill the silence he creates, because his stillness is not absence. It is pressure. Machiavelli understood this dynamic. The power of a leader is not in the noise he makes, but in the effect his quiet has on others. When the prince is silent, the court leans in, not because he is invisible, but because he is unreadable. And the unreadable figure holds more influence than the one who is always understood. Mystery breeds authority. Accessibility breeds dilution. That is why the man who needs no one does not volunteer his mind freely. He is not here to be known. He is here to be effective. And when he speaks, his words carry weight, not because of their volume, but because of their rarity. The fewer words he uses, the more each one means. He does not speak to participate. He speaks to direct. In an age where speech is endless, where opinions are cheap and everyone is trying to go viral, the man who speaks with restraint is magnetic. He becomes the one others wait for. His silence builds tension. His pauses are interpreted as strategy. And when he finally speaks, even those who disagree listen, because they've already invested in the anticipation of his voice. He is not popular. He is respected. He is not everyone's friend. He is everyone's mirror. He reflects your insecurity by not responding to it. He shows you the strength of your arguments by refusing to argue. He reveals your desperation for validation by offering none. This is not cruelty. This is precision. He does not manipulate with charm. He manipulates with clarity. His power is not to confuse, but to illuminate just enough, then leave the rest unsaid. Machiavelli taught that appearances are everything, but appearance is not the same as exposure. The man who needs no one appears composed, deliberate, self-contained. What he does not do is expose himself unnecessarily, and this makes him a strategist by nature. When others speak to be heard, he listens to gather advantage. When others seek visibility, he seeks leverage. When others act for attention, he waits for timing. His mind is built not for expression, but for positioning. Every silence is a move, every word a placement, every absence a statement. He sees what others miss, because he is not distracted by emotional hunger. He is not in the room to be liked. He is there to observe, and those who observe see what the expressive miss. They see fear behind jokes, insecurity behind volume, desperation behind oversharing. While others swim in the current of expression, this man stands still, and in that stillness he sees everything. You cannot play games with a man who doesn't join. You cannot win leverage over someone who values autonomy more than approval. And you cannot outmaneuver someone who doesn't reveal his position until you've already shown yours. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." The man who needs no one internalizes this not as permission to deceive, but as a warning. Words bind, and he binds himself to very little. His flexibility is his power. His lack of dependence is his shield. He does not burn bridges, but he does not cross them twice. He is not vengeful, because vengeance requires fixation. He simply moves on, quietly, completely, irreversibly, and when he does, you feel the absence more than you ever appreciated the presence, because what made him powerful was not his engagement, but his restraint. The world is not built for this man. It does not reward silence. It rewards spectacle. It does not praise solitude. It praises participation. But he does not need the world's rewards. His reward is internal freedom. His victory is not applause. It is clarity. And clarity, in a chaotic world, is the ultimate dominance. He will never trend. He will never explain. He will never chase, but he will be remembered, because in a world where everyone wants something, he needed nothing and took everything worth having. He builds in the dark while others promote their blueprints. He moves without noise while others drown in announcement. He disappears for months and returns with results that make the noisiest efforts look trivial, because while others talked, he built. While others reacted, he prepared. While others begged for attention, he became unavoidable. That is why he is dangerous. You cannot control what does not seek comfort. You cannot bribe what does not hunger. You cannot shame what does not crave inclusion. And you cannot defeat what does not fear isolation. This is not about being a loner. This is not about rejecting all human connection. It is about refusing dependency, about mastering the art of engagement without attachment, about operating with precision, not permission. And most of all, it is about becoming the kind of man who can walk away from anything, because he never needed it in the first place. There comes a moment in every ambitious man's journey when he must choose: will he move with the crowd, or will he detach? Will he gather alliances to feel safe, or will he walk alone to remain free? Most never make the choice. They drift, they chase comfort. They build relationships not out of purpose, but out of fear. Fear of isolation, fear of irrelevance, fear of themselves. But the man who needs no one confronts that moment with clarity. He chooses solitude, not because he hates people, but because he refuses to let them dilute his vision. He chooses silence, not because he lacks thoughts, but because he doesn't waste them. And he chooses power, not through domination, but through discipline. Machiavelli understood that restraint is not weakness. It is precision. It is the fox's cunning, the lion's patience. When others roar to prove strength, this man observes. When others strike prematurely, he studies. And when he moves, he does so with finality, not out of desperation, but out of calculation. In a world obsessed with openness, this man is a fortress. You cannot read him. You cannot decode him. He gives you what he wants you to see. Nothing more. That frustrates people, because most people believe they are entitled to your truth. But this man knows the more they know, the more they can use. And the less they know, the more they guess. Guessing creates fear. Guessing creates hesitation. Guessing creates power. The man who needs no one does not use strength to force outcomes. He uses doubt. He creates just enough uncertainty that others begin negotiating with themselves. While they wonder what he's thinking, he moves forward. While they try to read him, they reveal themselves. This is not deception. It is dominance through silence. Machiavelli never praised liars. He praised strategists. And the most powerful strategy is not in what you say, it's in what you choose not to say. Silence is not the absence of information. It is the control of information, and control in any form is leverage. This man applies that principle everywhere. In relationships, he does not overpromise. He allows his actions to carry weight, not his words. In business, he does not forecast for applause. He delivers for impact. In leadership, he does not command attention. He commands results. And in conflict, he does not erupt. He waits. And when he does speak, the room quiets. Not because he demands it, but because he's earned it. He is not always liked, but he is always respected. And respect built on silence lasts longer than affection built on noise. The man who needs no one doesn't care if you adore him. He only cares that you don't underestimate him. This disturbs people. They cannot categorize him. He is not loud enough to be a tyrant, not friendly enough to be a partner. He simply exists outside of their frame of reference, and that, Machiavelli would argue, is power. When others can no longer predict you, define you, or use you, he walks into the room without announcement. He leaves without explanation, and yet his presence lingers. Because he was never competing with you. He was building something deeper, something you couldn't see, because you were too busy talking. He lets others exhaust themselves with speech. He lets them reveal their plans, their wounds, their need to be seen. And when the noise dies down, he is still there, watching, waiting, acting. He does not operate on emotion. He uses emotion as a signal, not a compass. When anger comes, he notices. When fear creeps in, he acknowledges. But he does not obey. He does not move just because the feeling tells him to. He moves only when the outcome demands it. That is rare. Most men are ruled by feeling. They react. They chase. They collapse. But the man who needs no one builds his world on something firmer. Principle, discipline, vision. And when those guide him, no storm can shake him. Machiavelli warned that the greatest danger to a ruler was predictability. The man who is too consistent becomes vulnerable. His enemies know his habits. His allies take him for granted. But the man who is quiet, who pivots when needed, who says little and reveals less, he becomes dangerous, not because of what he does, but because of what no one knows he might do. This uncertainty is power. In modern life, we are taught to disclose everything. Tell your story, speak your truth, put yourself out there. But the man who needs no one knows the cost of that exposure. Every truth shared is a tool handed over. Every vulnerability displayed is a weapon given freely. So he chooses not to arm his enemies. He chooses to remain unreadable. And in doing so, he becomes unshakable. He is not heartless. He feels deeply, but he does not use those feelings to steer. He feels, and then decides. He reflects, and then acts. And once the decision is made, he does not explain. He does not consult. He does not ask for applause. He executes. While others are still gathering opinions, he's already finished the mission. That's the difference. He does not live for reaction. He lives for result. He does not need your faith to believe in himself. He does not need your echo to amplify his voice. And he does not need your presence to keep moving forward. Because the man who needs no one never. You cannot trap a man who has no strings. You cannot bribe a man whose price is internal. You cannot blackmail someone who has already made peace with loss. This is the final evolution. The man who not only needs no one, but fears nothing, not because he's reckless, but because he's prepared. He has built his world so completely on discipline and design that chaos does not rattle him. When others panic, he pauses. When others grasp, he releases. When others chase security, he sharpens himself. And that sharpening has made him into something rare, something formidable, something the world tries and fails to define. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, the strongest figure is not the one with the loudest voice, but the one who speaks last and needs to speak least, because words lose value when used for reassurance. And this man never seeks reassurance. His silence is not a void, it is a verdict. You cannot win against him by using emotion. He does not respond to praise, nor recoil from criticism. He listens, absorbs, filters, but he is not moved unless movement serves his mission. This is not detachment. This is mastery. He understands that every conversation, every alliance, every opportunity carries risk. Risk of exposure, risk of compromise, risk of distraction. So he chooses each engagement with care, and what he does not choose, he allows to pass without regret. He is not trying to be everything, he is trying to be exact. That makes him lethal. In leadership, he does not need to be followed. His direction alone attracts those who are ready. He does not entertain noise. He does not compete for attention, and yet attention finds him. Why? Because people sense when someone does not want to be watched, but must be. When someone does not care to be understood, but should be. That is the aura of the man who needs no one. He radiates an inner gravity. People orbit him, even as he walks alone. In negotiations, he never reveals his full position. He listens. He waits. He lets the other side show their hand first. Machiavelli taught that information is the battlefield, long before weapons ever touch. And this man, through his quiet, builds an arsenal of observation. While others speak themselves into weakness, he watches his way into power. In relationships, he does not beg for love, nor does he weaponize affection. He gives when it aligns with his values. He withdraws when it begins to cost his clarity. He understands that proximity without purpose is erosion, and he protects his energy not out of fear but out of respect for what he's building. Because that's what the world forgets. The man who needs no one is always building, not a network, not a brand, not an identity crafted by public opinion, but a kingdom, internal, invisible, unshakable. And that kingdom is built on choices no one sees, refusals no one applauds, sacrifices no one understands. He trains in silence, he suffers in silence, he calculates in silence, and then when the time comes, he appears not with noise but with dominance. His rivals won't understand where he came from. His critics won't know where he's going, because he gave them nothing to track. No signal, no warning, just results. You ask, how did he do that? The answer is simple. While you were talking, he was moving. While you were sharing, he was sharpening. While you were proving yourself, he was preparing. Machiavelli wrote, "Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others." This man, this sovereign figure, has secured himself so completely that he no longer reacts. He only chooses. That is what makes him dangerous. Not rage, not noise, but choice. His mind is not swayed by trends. His heart is not exposed to be played. His schedule is not open to be dictated. He lives with borders, internally fortified, externally controlled. And when he lets someone in, it is because they have passed through layers of observation, not because they knocked loud enough. In every field, business, art, politics, war, the man who needs no one stands apart. He does not need your validation to confirm his value. He does not need your applause to prove his impact. And he does not need your company to confirm his path. He moves without asking. He builds without sharing. He wins without gloating. And then he disappears, leaving behind results that echo louder than any speech. The tragedy of our time is that this man is misunderstood, labeled cold, called arrogant, misread as antisocial. But those labels are projections, attempts by the dependent to explain the free, because the dependent fear what they do not control. And this man cannot be controlled. He can be followed, he can be observed, but he cannot be influenced, unless he chooses to be. And that is the final form of strength. Not resistance, but refusal. Not anger, but indifference. Not pride, but peace. Because the man who needs no one has nothing to lose, and a man with nothing to lose except his mission is unstoppable. He leaves no trail, yet everything he touches shifts. He builds silently, yet his presence reshapes the landscape. And when he finally moves, there is no noise, only consequence. This is not myth. This is not fantasy. This is the reality of the man who needs no one. He exists not on the margins, but in plain sight, unreadable, untouchable, undeniable. You may not notice him at first. That is by design. But by the time you do, he has already changed the terms of the game. Niccolo Machiavelli saw it before anyone else. He understood that power is not taken by force alone. It is often acquired through discipline, timing, and the refusal to need. When you do not need approval, you cannot be flattered. When you do not need allies, you cannot be betrayed. When you do not need praise, you cannot be manipulated. This is the man Machiavelli warned about, not because he is a tyrant, but because he is free. And freedom in its rarest form terrifies the dependent. They call it cold, they call it cruel. But what they are really describing is the mirror that shows them what they are not. For this man does not follow moods. He follows mission. He does not adapt to comfort. He adapts to purpose. And in doing so, he reclaims the one resource no one else guards his attention. He does not spend his time explaining himself. He does not argue with the loud. He does not trade his presence for entertainment. He spends his time building leverage, not narratives. He knows that the world is distracted, addicted, reactive, and while the world dances for applause, he trains for precision. You can measure a man by what he reacts to. This one, he reacts to almost nothing, not because he is numb, but because he has sorted what matters from what does not. You cannot provoke him into weakness. You cannot pull him off course with ego. You cannot tempt him with shallow opportunity, because everything he does is tied to a long view, one you were never invited to see. Machiavelli once wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This man has mastered that gap. He appears calm, controlled, distant, but within, he is fire and architecture. His exterior does not match his depth, and that is the point. The more you underestimate him, the more time he gains. The more confused you are, the more freely he moves. Because he is not here to be interpreted. He is here to finish what he started. When he speaks, you listen, not because he demands it, but because something in your instincts knows. This voice comes from a place of silence. This opinion was earned, not echoed. This insight was built in solitude, not assembled in a crowd. He is not part of your competition. He is above it. You were trying to impress. He was trying to improve. You were building a name. He was building a throne. You were collecting followers. He was cutting attachment. And now that it's time to move, you realize he's already there waiting, watching, finishing what others were too distracted to begin. He will never be the loudest, but he will be the last, because while others burned out trying to be seen, he conserved every ounce of energy to strike with precision. That's how he wins. He does not argue. He observes. He does not react. He repositions. He does not ask for more time. He uses the time no one else noticed was slipping away. And when it's done, when the victory is visible and the landscape has changed, you'll ask, where was he? He was in the shadows, not hiding, but preparing. He was silent, not absent, but calculating. He was still, not stagnant, but watching every move while you revealed your own. This is what makes him the most dangerous threat. He does not need chaos to win. He does not need attention to lead. He does not need others to begin. And when all the noise dies down, when the shouting fades and the crowds disperse, He is still standing, silent as ever, with everything that matters in his hands. That is why the man who needs no one is not only feared, he is fine. If you've made it this far, it means something in you has already shifted. A quiet part of you recognizes the truth behind these words. Not as theory, but as necessity. You're beginning to understand that needing no one isn't loneliness. It's freedom. That being understood means nothing if you have to betray your own clarity to achieve it. And that peace, real peace, often begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand. So now I ask you, are you willing to be misread, to be the quiet one in a loud world? To be the man who walks alone because he refuses to beg for belonging? If you are, if this message found you at the right time, write in the comments, I choose my power. Let's see how many of you are done performing, done chasing, done explaining. Let's see how many are ready to rule from within. And don't stop here. Watch the next video. It's not just content, it's your next move. See you there.